championship season where you now start thinking about the midpoint as we go. Round 5 of the RadicalSimRacing.com European Championship 2025, powered by Radical Motorsport and RaceData.ai. We are in the thralls of the mid-stage right now, which means drivers are looking to build up the meat and potatoes of their season to get themselves to dessert, which will be a championship by the end of proceedings. I'm Jake Sperry. JR Gregory is alongside with me for today's action. And JR, when it comes to where we are today, it's a place that does not need introduction. Unchanged since 1987. It is the mountain of mountains, Mount Panorama in Bathurst.
Such an incredible venue, truly a temple of modern motorsport, and I had the privilege to scratch this one off of the bucket list. I attended the Bathurst 12 in February, and it is stunning if you ever get the chance to go up there and stand over the track at Forest Elbow or stand over the track on the S's. You're within spitting distance of those cars as they take that massive risk of shooting between the concrete walls on every lap, and it is spectacular.
And just to note that over the course of this season, it's a case of you know where you've been, but you don't know where you're going. It's a case of Oulton Park was a little tricky last time out, but Mount Panorama, a much different challenge out there for these drivers. Now, the driver, the champion of each class, gets 12 months of an iRacing subscription to iRacing with free entry for the 2026 season and enter the World Finals for 2025. P2 also gets a world seat, but no 12-month subscription to get a free entry for the next season. A finals entry for those in for Ps3 to 7, and the last chance race for those in Ps 8 to 14. Teams champions, of course, get a track in iRacing per driver, and as well, they get a free entry for the 2026 season and a free entry for the vice teams champion in each class. So definitely a lot of retention for the teams and the drivers as they go about their action. But as the standings go, it doesn't get much closer with 2 drop rounds applied through the first 4 rounds of the season. 4 points between Christoph Lipp and Christopher Tivarayan, who are there in first and second positions.
Yeah, and as we go on down that list, Harvard Gillickson showing is still sniffing around there, certainly within striking distance. Very early in the season. It's a long season, 10 races that last through October. So there are substantial breaks between each track, but you see Andreas Friedrich, James Berry, multiple champion in the public servers, Soltero, Larson, Sebastian Lipp, brother of Christoph there, and P8, then Lendoff and Kim Andre Bjorklund there in P10. But a lot of time left, and I'm sure those drivers are feeling pretty good about being at the top, but they're nowhere near the finish line.
Inert Team 2 ahead of Inert eRacing Team 1 in the standings. IGL Coatings and Sander Traffic Skol Precis is in third position with Nix Esports and IGL Coatings then finding themselves in 5th and 7th. Then with Inert eRacing Team 3 in 6th place. No Luke Crowley here today in the AM category standings, which means a chance for Gabriel Berger and Eric Benston then to move up 90th and 88 points respectively, with Louis Gregg in 4th position then on 72 points. Likes of Mika Henrik Hulkinen and Ole Gunnar Stensrud in 5th and 6th, with Menno de Graaf and Robert Walker 7th and 8th. Henry Hollings and Glenn Andre Christiansen rounding out the top 10, which means that the B Team Racing, who are in the top at the moment, have a pretty sizable lead that might be eaten into by Team Slow-Mo and Project 91 Academy. Not so much help then for Team Moop or for Octopus Racing Team, 44 and 41 points respectively. But if you weren't here for the first or for the round last time out at Oulton Park, here's your little chance to get an understanding of what happened there. It was a real case of how hard do you battle, and issues immediately off the start there in the back. There were troubles for Christoph Lipp, who started 2nd position on the grid but had fallen all the way down there by that running off wide to 8th position. So a lot of dramas befell in the early stage, and you can see that skittling right down the hill, JR, causing lots of troubles there. 9th position, Lendoff and Gerstenbakken getting into each other, then coming through the corner there of Druids. It goes to show you how tough of a circuit this is.
Yeah, Alton Park always puts on a fantastic show with these SR10s, and they usually omit those two chicanes on the back end. So careening down the hill into Knickerbrooks, always an adventure, always contested entries at the bottom of that hill, deep into sixth gear, and there's never been a boring race here involving a Radical SR10 at Alton Park.
No, and the pit stop cycles all became important. There were some great battles out there. Nagel Serrano and Kyriakopoulos, they're doing well. Smokescreen for Andoni Lendorf there, trying to stay out of the way. Pablo Serrano getting heavy damage there to the rear wing going on by. But while all the pit stops brought Christoph Lipp back to fourth, it was a case of Larson losing out there. Kjetil Larson, not much he could do at Knickerbrook corner as the move was made. And then up through the Shell Oils corner, some fantastic battling between Huff and Craig in that long battle for third place overall in the AM category, getting very sketchy out just before the Britain chicane that they didn't run, and missing out the Hislop chicane going down the hill over towards Knickerbrook. It was a case of who could do their best, and ultimately it was Christopher Tivarayan who would pick up victory in category, as well as Gabriel Berger dropping the gap down in the AM category championship and having a good reason to smile with that result going over the line. There is Tivarayan picking up the win then for IGL Coatings and Sander Traffic School Precision, and making sure that that worked out in its space. Qualifying, though, is currently underway at the Mount Panorama Bathurst circuit, but it's cold as cold can be. 22 degrees out there for track temperature. At in-sim time, just gone 10:15 in the morning. It's cold, as we'd expect here in the summer months, so to speak, on the northern hemisphere. It's winter here down in the southern hemisphere.
Yeah, and these drivers have got to be loving those low track temperatures. Only 19C air temp, 22 track temp, as you said. And in an hour race, it can be really challenging to keep the front tires on these radicals. There are a lot of tracks where you can take pressure off the fronts through trail braking, and the drivers strive to do that where it's available. But here at Bathurst, you look at it right there as Soltero pushes that car down through Forest Elbow. That is just riding the understeer. There are spots on that track where that's really all that you can do due to the nature of the circuit, and you really have to take care of those front tires. An hour of that, you really start to experience some understeer and experience some washout on entry in the lower speed corners, and it's really something that these guys are going to have to be conscious of.
Well, it's a very unique car. This is a track day enthusiast machine out here, the Radical SR10. 725 kilograms only, with a car that has 425 brake horsepower. It's out there producing about 580 brake horsepower per ton as Oscar Soltero runs over towards the line. 203.4 there, so trying to get a cool lap maybe in with the tyres to go back out and attack. Kjetil Larson currently quickest now on a 58.2. James Barry has just gone second quickest out there, and there is Franek Sikorsky for Project 91 up over the top of the hill. These three consecutive lefts are challenging out of Reed Park over the metal grate, now at McPhillamy, and you find yourself at Peter Brock Skyline.
Yeah, really tough stuff right there. And if you're primarily a sports car GT3 racer, such as myself, particularly in that 911 GT3 car, that can be a little dodgy right there on those three consecutive lefts. But in these cars, the skilled drivers, Jake, are going to be keeping it pinned all the way through there. It is risky, but doable. And if you want to be on the pointy end of this pro field, you got to take that risk on every lap.
Pablo Serrano is by far and away the best of the AM category at the moment. 11th place in qualifying. You take that, the next nearest, you've got to go all the way down to Eric Benston there, who is in 17th place. Sikorsky out then of the fastest corner in Australian SimRacing, the chase, and over through the lefts and the rights of the chicane. Looking now to attack that final corner of Murray's. It's just a 90-degree left, but how an easy corner like this constantly puts the fear into everyone's lap who tries to put it all together. You will not believe how many times it goes wrong. That's a great lap time to go to fourth with lap time sorted and time expiring. Then Christoph Litley has jumped up. That will mean that the grid is sorted for action here at Mount Panorama, and it will stack up as follows, with Kjetil Larsen on pole position for IGL Coatings and Sander Traffic Skoll Passion, with Christoph Litt alongside for company. It's then Lasse Sorensen who will go from third, with Franek Sikorsky fourth. James Barry and Sebastian Lipp are fifth and sixth. Christopher Tivarayan, who is only 4 points back from the championship leader Christoph Lipp, has work to do in seventh, with Mats Gjetströmbacken, who is there in eighth place. Then it's Håvard Gulliksen in ninth, and Jorge Gonzaga, who rounds out the top 10 of the field. Your leading AM for Nix Esports is Pablo Serrano, who will go from 11th, with Rudolf Nagel there for SimRC in 12th position. Then it's Andong Lengdorf in 13th, with Oscar Soltero 14th. Andreas Friedrich and Sauli Raitinen will be 15th and 16th position. Then it's the team slow-mo car of Eric Benson in 17th. Ewan Bremer is 18th, with Louis Gregg and the likes behind of Robert Walker, Kim Andre Björklund in 21st, and Menno de Graaf for the Vicro Racing team in 27th. Your 12th row is Ollie Gunnar Stensrud and Stefan Mellis, 2.8 seconds off the pace, which leaves the last two drivers on row 13, Guy Robertson there for Team Moop, and the Project 91 Academy car not setting a time. Your driver second in the championship, Gabriel Berger, who will have it all to do at the mountain. They queue up here at Mount Panorama around the final corner at 23 degrees as we have advanced to 10:30 in sim time. They have 2 minutes to grid or start from pit lane. It is a case that these radicals are looking to charge today through Hell's Corner and up through towards turn 2 at the Quarry Bend. That mountain straight will be critical for early passes out there, and watch out for any issues out there on track in the middle as the green flag drops, and a good start by Lasse Sorensen from what is the third position on the grid, diving into the opening corner, almost contact then to try and get by Christoph Lipp early, but as they now look to dance, it's clean as they go through the opening section of this circuit. What we like to see, drafting game will now start immediately up the mountain straight, where second, third, fourth and fifth all fall into line. Sikorsky there, James Barry losing out on a position early up into the Quarry Bend, and a little bit out of position now. There goes the place for Sikorsky, now under pressure from Tivarayan.
And what a fantastic start. And just a reminder, folks, these cars do not have traction control. So we're coming off a standing start with 450 horsepower, hardly any weight, no TC or ABS on these things. So, and it also notably, Jake, takes some time to get heat in these tires. They are not going to be in their optimal grip range for 2 or 3 laps. So a lot of high risk action taking place, particularly for those not wanting to lose positions at the front of the grid.
Well, Rudolf Nagel is one who has lost positions with a massive lockup at the cutting, may have even tagged the wall going up there through 3 into 4, down through the dipper then for the first time as they now descend, and you look at the forest elbow as a place where you can make it happen. Here's the replay. Nagel absolutely tail out sideways, getting binders on, and I'll tell you what, if he doesn't have 50 pence pieces, I don't know what he's got in the tyres underneath now.
Holy cow. And that was actually a pretty good save. That could have been a lot worse for Nagel as we charged down the Conrad straight for the first time and into the chase, and pretty well behaved so far. It's Larsen from Lipp from Sorensen up front, and not a lot of people showing noses. They're taking an easy start here. Remember, this is not a 20-minute sprint. You got to take it easy and survive for 60 minutes, and particularly, as I said, those front tires need to survive, so you've got to warm them up carefully.
Oh, we had a car off the road, and it was Tivarayan, who's dropped about 6 or 7 places. He's now behind Gabriel Berger, who's had a good start to this one. So a really tough start for Tivarayan out there. Here's Sikorsky, who now is looking to try and charge on up, gain this place to go to 4th on James Barry. And this might be a day for Christoph Lipp to try and do maximum damage at the top end of the championship. Sikorsky close up the mountain straight into the Quarry Bend at turn number 2. They will lead themselves themselves over towards the cutting here, this mountain road right now, and you can see how close they're going. You see a tiny puff of smoke here, there, and everywhere every time you go around this place as you go through. So this is Tivarayan, who had himself a little bit of an issue there, blinking out of existence for a moment, and then I think that would have been a screen freeze or something of the like there, which would have caused a case of just running straight on, not wanting to make contact with anyone else.
To see, oh, and there's an big off right there, and maybe some contact on the outside wall. Who was that?
That was Lasse Sorensen from third position, running off the road sideways there. And at the highest section of the circuit by elevation, that's one place you so easily see cars go off the road because they attack too much going into McPhillamy Park. We'll take a look from Lasse Sorensen's perspective. Oh, absolutely brutal over that curb. That could have spat him out 100 ways. He's lucky he's still got a car.
Yeah, he really is. It's incredible that he stayed out of the wall there. And as I said, going through Sulman into McPhillamy, you got to roll the dice there. You set up on the curb on the outside, you cross the curb across the apex and get a little bit of curb on the exit. And these radicals with these fixed setups, very stiffly sprung, do not like bouncing over the curbs. And it's a risk that you got to take to stay up front.
Move made by Sebastian Lipp through on Franek Sikorsky, the pole driver, who is there in fifth position now, and now down to sixth, sorry, at this point, with Mats Gjeströmbacka, who is just there behind. Horvath Gulliksen sits then and waits in eighth position. Then Jorge Gonzaga is there in ninth, and a little gap to the leading AM of Pablo Serrano, who is currently in 10th place. And back up the mountain again. These are the two great places to get these moves done. Rudolf Nagel, by the way, has just pulled the car into pits at the moment, so obviously something's gone wrong early on, but you really do get a sense of where you can battle. A little bit of side-by-side in the background there. That was Anthony making the pass then on Andreas Friedrich there for position, so Friedrich losing out, and look how close to the wall you get a little bit further back there. So Glendhoff getting close through that section of road through turn 4, and for the moment Nix Esports will be happy with the move done. Suddenly it's Ewan Bremer's turn to try and chase.
Great camera work here, and you see those little puffs of concrete smoke on the entry and exit to so many of these corners, and that's just part of racing here at Mount Panorama. It is so stressful to run this close to the walls, but like any street circuit with walls nearby, it's part of it, and it's part of the risk that you got to take to keep it moving. These guys are going to want to keep it clean, though. This could be a race of attrition as it winds down. Only 5 minutes in so far. Hard to believe that these guys have to keep this up with 2 pit stops over the course of 60 minutes. Very, very difficult to do consistently in these things.
Yeah, and with those pit stops that they have to navigate by, it will be a question of where's the right place. Top of your screen, race for the lead. Bottom of your screen is the race on for P12 out there. You got 4 clear at the front. Larson, Lipp, Sorensen, and then James Barry in 4th position. And then you got Anthony who is now looking at Andreas Friedrich, who's just gone by. In comes Soltero to make his first stop of the race. So I'm not surprised to see drivers pitting early in this race right now, JR. It's a case of give yourself some clean air to attack.
Yeah, absolutely. And the way the fuel loads go in these cars, the pit window is actually open at the drop of the green flag at the beginning of the race. That's intended to help people out. If they have an incident early, they can get in, get their first fuel load, and get a fast repair and stay on course. So if you have an incident, you're way out of position, you can definitely get an undercut working. If you're having people in front of you, if you're being held up by slow traffic in front, give yourself some clean air and close that gap in the pits.
Yeah, 15.3 seconds in the box then for Oscar Soltero, and twice into the lane. It's not difficult to leave this pit, so it's very difficult to enter it. It's one of the most aggressive pit entries you'll find out there in the world of sim racing. And oh, it's getting close. Oh, it's contact. Christoph Lipp, the championship leader, goes into the gravel, just about avoids it there. Aggressive as anything from Lasse Sorensen. And that puts Christoph Lipp back behind Franek Sikorsky.
Very aggressive move there by Lasse. We'll get another look at that in a second. But and meanwhile, look at Larson up front, Jake. That gap has swollen to almost a second and a half. And when he looks in his rearview mirror and sees this fighting going on behind him, you know that puts a smile on his face. Ooh,
it's never on.
That.
Yeah, it's never on. He tries to find an angle down the inside, and it's trouble. We've also had Andreas Friedrich have a half spin coming down the hill, and he somehow avoided the barriers and is able to continue on. So Friedrich dealing with issues out there and trying to recover. Lasse Sorensen now into third position because James Barry has taken up the mantle that was left behind by one of his teammates, so to speak. And dropping down the timing order now is Ewan Bremer by the looks of it, and the whole group through then on him of Greg and Benson and co. But on the view from behind, this is what James Barry would be looking at to Lasse Sorensen, Sebastian Lipp in fourth position. And the group right now, the more they battle, the more they're going to allow Kjetil Larsen the chance to run away.
Yeah, Larson getting away here, and there's a little peek inside up into Griffins, and Barry is just going to let that one go. That'll put Sorensen back up into P2. But what I was going to say, this little train forming right now, Sorensen from Barry, from Lipp, they may be well advised just to take a breath, stay nose to tail, and take advantage of the opportunity to fuel save here. Fuel save has played a role in some of these races, and like I say, if you let the fight go for a little bit, save some fuel, it can make a big difference in the pit. Fuel does not go into these cars quickly, so saving a couple laps worth by drafting and lifting and coasting can make a big difference at the end.
No, it's not going to be a case of that you've got a fuel pump to go and put it in. I wonder whether you've got the old jug system that's working here in iRacing, that you've got to put a fuel jug to the car and make sure that that filters down in. So as we've seen a lot of long times out there, this is what happened then for the inner iRacing Team 1 driver, Andreas Friedrich, down through the dipper, off the exit. Look at that broadside, and locks them up and somehow keeps it out of the barriers.
Wow, and that's such a tough spot right there, and another high-risk spot as the track drops away from you. You don't want to overbrake and overslow there, and there's so many places. Man, Bathurst just diabolically designed where they dangle these opportunities in front of you, and yeah, you can take up a couple of tenths here, but you got to take a huge risk, and if it goes wrong, it's going to cost you dearly. You saw it biting Friedrich there.
Yeah, certainly did. So Horvath Gulliksen then has found a way through and has gained the time. But for the moment, Gjestrom Bakum is just behind and looking to try and hunt down in this group at the moment with Lipp, Gonzaga, Serrano and co. They're all there and they're all hunting at this. Oh, and a little wiggle off the exit there from Gulliksen. That will really open up the door for Gjestrom Bakum.
Yeah, that's another tough spot of many here. That hell corner, turn one onto the mountain straight. You want to ride up and onto that curb, but going just a little bit too far, getting a little bit of dirt, or getting too much of a bounce when you get up on that curb can really upset these radicals. And as you see, all you need to lose is a tenth or a tenth and a half, and that opens the door for the driver behind, especially when they're packed together as we're seeing them right now.
Jorge Gonzaga then in the mix in 9th position and looking just to stay on the back, coming off then of the consecutive corners here. The fast left-handers that come along over the metal grate there, taking a lot of precaution down on the lower side as he goes, and now thinking about what he does over the top of Skyline. Right, left, right, and you imagine that you're in a river right now. It's a rapid going down here. You're pretty much on it for the ride. Imagine a roller coaster. You are not going to get off until you exit the Forest Elbow, this heavy down the hill section, and a lot of drivers pivot down to the inside and turn early instead of taking an out line because they realize that there's no benefit by taking the wide line through the corner.
Yeah, there really isn't. It can be very difficult to get the car to turn in there. So, I make that choice as well to keep it tucked in inside, and it kind of gives you a better warning system if something is going to go wrong there, and helps you get on the power and time that throttle application out of Forest Elbow. So critical to start that long run down Conrad Straight.
James Barry then in 3rd position, still eyeing up Lasse Sorensen, who's there in 2nd. But the key to this is that Sorensen has actually clawed that gap back for the group to Kjetil Larsen. It was up at 1.2 as in comes Jorge Gonzaga then to make the stop. And so for James Barry, for Sebastian Lipp, for Franek Sikorsky, they'll look at this and go, well, you're doing all this work to pull us back, and we don't have to do anything except sit in your toe. Nearly 250 clicks on the straight, up the hill, into turn 2.
Yeah, and you see Barry there. The slipstream in these cars, very, very powerful, as we say every week. Barry definitely had a run there and backed out of that. He could have contested Griffin's Bend on the outside. It is completely doable, but chose to hang behind Sorensen, not lose any more time to Larson. And you see that front group there. Now that the fighting has stopped, that gap up between Sorensen and Larson tightening up there down to half a second, when at one point Larson had driven away to about a second and a half. And that slipstream going to work here and causing these cars to form these little trains. And that front one, Larson from Sorensen, from Barry, from Lip, have dropped Frantic Sikorsky to the tune of 2 seconds.
I'm looking around at drivers who have gone and made their stops, like Tiva Ryan, for example, behind Rudolf Nagel and Oscar Soltero, and Gonzaga is a long way clear of that. So Tiva Ryan's got a big damage limitation day ahead of him if he wants to go and make this race work outright. But on the straight they go of Conrad. Here comes James Barry, straight to the inside, easy as you like through the curb, and he was having none of anything but the fact that he's going into second place and making that pass. The gap out to 9/10. He said, I can't wait any longer. This was Sikorsky, at the cutting, straight into the wall and hard into the wall as well. So that will definitely bring in drivers to the pits. Let's say Sorensen is going to be one of them who's coming in and pitting. Now remember, they do have one fast repair. If they've done too much damage to the car, they can come in and get it sorted. No surprise to see Sikorsky in.
Yeah, Sikorsky needed that. These radicals are fairly tough. You see him banging doors pretty enthusiastically in a lot of places, but that hard hit on the right front that he suffered there, no car could take that. That suspension definitely damaged, and Sikorsky taking advantage of his one and only fast repair with 45 minutes remaining.
Yep, so 45 minutes you're going to have to hold on to here at Mount Panorama. It's a daunting prospect right now as they go, and it does leave a couple cars then together. This is Horvath Gulliksen, who leads in front of Mats Gjestrombacher then. So these two having everyone around them come in and make the stop. They're going to have to overcut, so they're looking for pace as they go through. A couple of the AMs in as well. Guy Robertson there for the Team Moop, and as well Gabriel Berger is going to be in the pits. 19.5 seconds for Berger, long stop.
Yeah, and teammates there. We're watching Gulliksen and Gjestrombacher probably working together, probably on comms. And depending on how long they decide to stay out, we may see them switching back and forth so that they can both benefit from the fuel savings of the draft. And here comes Larson, Beery, and Lip down the hill. Larson really not able to get away from Bear, and you see that draft going to work as that gap will drop, probably be down to about half a second by the time they get to the chase.
Yeah, and half a second only will be that gap as they go through 6/10 or so as they rush on by 1, 2, and 3. Happy as they are as they go along this front section. I believe Jorge Gonzaga has made his second stop then of the races. They're all in. So Larson blinking about as he jumps into the pits, and he'll be followed immediately there by James Barry and Sebastian Lip. And so this will be a long wait because Gulliksen is in. Gjestrombacher has come in. Greg and Bremer in as well. This indicates to me that they have reached the end of the tank life early on in this one to be aggressive. Everybody is in the pits, and they will wait for car one, who's got the jump in the box stops there, Christoph Lip.
Yeah, this is the last opportunity to pit. These cars start with a light fuel load of 20 liters. One of the ways that they enforce the 2 pit stop rule, there will be filling to 44, but they start light, only good for 9 laps. So this is it right now, and we're looking at a traffic jam down on pit lane.
Well, look at this. Off the exit, Sebastian Lip and James Barry have jumped Kettle Larson in the stop. Everybody else taking their service and going away. So Christoph Lip now having to fight with Horvath Gulliksen for position, and Gulliksen's going to lose out. So Lip moves through on Gulliksen for position. Then it's Sorensen. Then it's Gjestrombacher out there on track, and it's a complete change from where they were at the start of this race. So let's call this what it is right now. This is effectively the field as it's locked. Tiva Ryan into 10th place, but Sebastian Lip obviously taking a lighter fuel load here at this first pit stop. That's going to leave the long second stop, you'd feel.
And Barry following suit here, and there are some options here. As I said, a 44-liter tank available, and I guess ideally you would want to split the entire fuel requirement for the second part of the race between the two stops, or you could take a short fill in the first stop and take a longer one in the second and try to get away. And fascinating that Lip and Barry both seem to choose the same fuel strategy. Their pit times less than a second apart and about 2 seconds quicker than a substantial chunk of the other competitors.
Well, Pablo Serrano and the rear wing gone on the car has gone into the barriers up around the 3 consecutive left-hand bends at the top end of the circuit, has taken the fast repair and is out and away again, but had to wait for tow time from the top of the mountain. So has certainly done an okay job of getting back out there, but not what he would have wanted today in this race, having had a good start to this one as they battle still at the front. We've got changes out there. So this is the first part for Pablo Serrano, and this is coming in through the cutting. Back steps out, just pushing a bit too hard. It's like having a go-kart, but you decided, you know what, let's soak it up a bit and put 400 horsepower in it.
Yeah, absolutely. And my goodness, Serrano trying to trail brake. I mentioned it early on. These cars respond really well to trail braking, and in a long race, it behooves you to do so, to take some pressure off of those front tires. But overcooking that entry a little bit and over-rotating into the cutting there while under braking, and very easy to do. It's another one of those places where the track dares you to roll the dice, and if it comes up snake eyes, that is the result: body damage into those concrete barriers.
And that damage is very unforgiving here on the mountain. It always has been, so you always take this section of track with a hint of caution as you go through. Christoph Lipp still harvesting here to try and get back to Kjetil Larsen. That gap is currently 2.4 seconds on the road, but it has come down by half a second over the course of this lap. So certainly is making progress. Håvard Gulliksen is there just behind in 5th, and will be very happy to say, right, give me a tow rope and pull me along, please, sir.
Too right. And again, fuel savings make a big difference in this. We mentioned it before. Fuel goes into these cars through a straw at the end of a funnel. It does not go in quickly. So if you can save a lap's worth of fuel, it will make a big difference in your final pit stop time. And that may be what Gulliksen has in mind right here as he tucks in behind Lip. He definitely would have had a run there and backed out of that one. So content right now to sit behind Lip and save some fuel is Gulliksen.
267 kilometers an hour down the hill, able to manage. Lip at full bore hit 268, so there was definitely a lift there. James Barry, though, has taken control of the race lead. That into turn 1, because that was a mistake from Sebastian Lip through the final corner. It almost looked like the left rear started to lift up through the final corner, just getting too much rotation in through, and Sebastian Lip now finds himself second to James Barry.
Wow. And, you know, that is James Barry's game. He's not flashy. He's not throwing down the insane alien lap times. Oh, as we see Malice there, over-rotating there in Hell's Corner. But James Barry has the racecraft and the patience to make sure that he's in position if somebody in front of him makes a mistake. You saw it there, Lip struggling through Murray's. It's very difficult. You had to thread the needle between 2 very high curbs, and a little bit too much of a kiss on the inside there caused Lip to get a little loose. He saved it, but lost exit speed and sent Barry through.
Yeah, and we got our first retirement then from the race, and it is Anthony who is going to be out of this one. He's obviously run himself into trouble somewhere over the course of the lap, and I think it was the Forest elbow which caught him out and has meant that he is going to be the first retiree then from this race. So that is going to be tough to navigate through and deal with. This is going to be now interesting because all of that battling that they've done, James Barry says insert name here. Well, I tell you what, put Sebastian Lip as the name that goes by, as the name to place there, because he has flown on through 274 kilometers an hour onto the brakes, getting a monster slipstream there down Conrad, and meaning that they've got Kjetil Larsen now on the back of them.
Yeah, Larson is liking what he's seeing ahead of him as the Lip and Barry switching positions. Larson cranking that gap down right now. He's sitting at 1.4 seconds behind Barry. And if you get within, I'm going to call it 0.8 or 0.9, 0.8 for sure, coming down that Conrad straight, the slipstream effect in these cars is almost comical. It feels like you have push to pass or DRS in effect, because you can pick up 15, 20 kph quite easily, especially in that downhill section.
And James Barry moves back in front then, going along the mountain straight. So they are trying to trade to get themselves away. The issue they've got, Kettle Larson on the back. This is the group behind them, sat at about 2.8 seconds off the back of Larson. It is the group of Christoph Lipp and Horvath Gullikson, who started 9th position here today and has found a way to move on up to 5th. And to give you an understanding of how close qualifying was here, it was 0.3 of a second that split the top 9, 3.5 tenths. So tells you all you need to know. Good scrap up to the cutting here. This is Sauli Raitanen, who's up against Kim-Andre Björklund.
Yeah, a couple of very good drivers, frequent flyers, both here and on our Friday 2100 GMT Radical Esports Cups broadcast. But you see that short gap there. And again, it's I'm a broken record here, but if Bjorklund can hang in there and keep that gap low, he will have the choice of whether to make the pass coming down Conrad Straight. And there's really nothing the lead driver can do about it. You can cover the inside, you can cover the outside, but the speed differential so extreme that if the guy behind wants to pass, there's nothing you can do. And there is another victim of Murray's Corner. You see DeGraff there having a lockup on entry. Such a tough corner, and you see it catching another driver out right there.
Menno de Graaf is not going to be pleased about that, but fortunate enough to keep it out of the barriers. That's the only saving grace with an issue at Murray's Corner. You can see the tyre tracks as they went in. Sebastian Lipp then just behind James Barry, and then Kettle Larson, the pole sitter, who is there in 3rd position. The fuel game to get them on top. That will also be one of what they're trying to do. Keep their strategy the same, slipstream off each other, save off each other, and hopefully extend a little bit longer into this run. So Lipp getting a good run here up the mountain straight, but I don't think this time it's going to be close enough to James Barry. 1, 2, and 3, they stay, but they've got to keep this pace up. They're doing about 58 to... I'm looking around at that. Kettle Larson just did a lap time 600ths off his qualifying time. That is insane, the level of pace they're going.
Yeah, Larson absolutely flying. Larson, the pole sitter, showing how he started this race in P1. That gap was, he's taken about a second out of Barry and Lipp over the last 2 or 3 laps. Absolutely flying, and some great camera work there as you see more concrete dust spewing into the air as these radicals are brushing the walls of death here coming up over the mountain.
Battle is also on for 9th position, where Christopher Tivarayan is still dealing with Rudolf Nagel, who, remember, had to come in for that very early pit stop, same as Tivarayan. These two will need to work together at about 4.5 seconds off the back of Franek Sikorsky to get there, and you can see the wheel work that's being done by the lumps and bumps as you go down the hill. You feel light when you get the steering going down the Big Dipper, but at the front, here comes a little search for that move. Sebastian Lipp will move back to the front past James Barry. Kettle Larson ever watching and monitoring this group battle right now into the chase.
Yeah, and, you know, we've seen Jake before with cars this close. Larson obviously taking a breath here and just wanting to hang with the teammates Lipp and Barry up front. But we have seen, because of that slipstream, that P3 car can get a twofer into the chase easily. A little early for it now, obviously, but something to keep in mind for later.
And let's not forget that Horvath Gullikson is going to be close out there on track and is always going to make something happen. A change in AM category. Louis Gregg takes the lead. They're battling for the AM lead right now. Gregg and Benson are there together on the road too. So everywhere you look, there's a battle pack here and a battle pack there, and you're going to have to be switched on and focused. There you can see Louis Gregg, who leads after making that pass on Eric Benson, and they've got a nice gap to 3rd in class, which is Robert Walker, who's running there trying to get the team moving up forward and doing what they can in this race.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what Benson wants to do here. Still haven't seen an outside entry into Griffin's Bend upcoming at the top of the mountain straight. We will see it before this one is over, but for right now, Benson going to take a breather and just make sure he stays within striking distance of Greg as they make their way over the mountain and reassess coming down Conrad Straight.
Battle on for Pro Lead, battle on for Am Lead as they now descend down the hill in the Pro battle, and Sebastian Lipp gives himself 0.6 of a second. James Barry then looking around at Kjetil Larsen. If he gives too much of a run right now to Kjetil, he will move on through and gain a bit more. The gap extending there in what is 4th position out there, and in for the Am Lead right now. You've got Oscar Soltero as well. Look at this, getting busy behind him. So Soltero watches. That's Gabriel Berger through on Robert Walker, now to 3rd in class in the AMs. When you haven't set a qualifying time like Gabriel Berger did, and suddenly you're now up 3rd in class, knowing that the championship leader's not here, this is a big point stay needed.
A great opportunity for him, and way to keep your head in the game and keep your head down. I'm sure that Berger was feeling some frustration after picking up a couple X's in that qualifying session. Qualifying up here is tough because if you puff that wall and that little concrete cloud comes up, even if it's a 0X, iRacing will count it as a dirty lap. So it's probably what happened to Berger. And you see him, he's going to try the outside here coming down the hill, and oof, oh, that was awesome. If you've watched the Bathurst 12, that's reminiscent of that BMW that ultimately came in P2, making that move for the 2nd place as that race wound down. Great move there by Berger.
Pass in the grass for Gabriel Berger. Oscar Soltero, I don't think is going to take too kindly to it, and now is going to want to try and attack back on the bottom of your screen. Stays close as we are just a minute away from halfway in this 5th round of the Radical Sim Racing European Championship, powered by Radical Motorsport and RaceData.ai. At the moment, it sits with Sebastian Lipp at the front. This on for 17th, a battle between Pro and Am. Soltero, the Pro, Berger, the Am. Here comes Soltero, looking to lunge down the inside here at the quarry corner. Turn 2, but around the outside. Oh, give some credit to Gabriel Berger. You don't often hold him around the outside of turn 2 and inside at the cutting.
Wow, that was absolutely nuts. And you might wonder why these two are fighting when they're in different classes. Doesn't seem like they should be racing each other, but the pool of points is the same. They don't have separate points for the Pro and Am category. So a position up is more points for you, whether you're passing a Pro or an Am, which would explain that high risk move side by side through Griffins. That is just nuts at this time in the race. But, you know, race car drivers will be race car drivers, and Jake, and we saw it there.
We certainly did, and it shows that you're never too early or too late in a race to make a daring move, and that we saw, of course, from Berger at this stage. We go on board with Kjetil Larsen here, looking from the left front suspension as we take that drive there. The red rims on the white, green and black machine looks to try and catch what is effectively the danger signs in front. The yellow and black that is there in front as they change once again. James Barry back to the point, makes the move on Sebastian Lipp, and that gap to Christoph Lipp and Horvath Gulliksen has stayed exactly the same, and so the pressure's going to be on Lipp and Barry compared to the likes of Christoph Lipp and Horvath Gulliksen on how long that final stop's going to be. Kjetil Larsen is in dreamland at the moment, took a longer first stop, has to take a shorter second one, and is just sitting and waiting on the back of your front two.
Barry and Lipp there giving Larsen a clear message. We'll call it the Gandalf. You shall not pass. We're going to roadblock you up the mountain straight. It's going to happen again here on Conrad. And at some point here, Larsen's got to be thinking about an undercut. Pit window probably going to open up in the next 5 or 10 minutes. So does Larsen want to get out from behind these two teammates who are probably on comms and plotting against him on every lap?
So the threat will be Lip and Gullikson. The question will be how much of a threat Lasse Sorensen and Mats Gjestrombakken are going to be 6th and 7th, whether they will factor into this second pit stop. It was about 3 seconds or so they took of advantage, so I don't think it's going to be massive that they're going to lose that much time. But down the hill again and into the chase, the only section of circuit, that chicane, being the difference maker from 1938 when they first started racing here all the way up to 1986. It was a straight run from Conrod to Murray's. From 1987 onwards, they added the chase chicane.
Yeah, and if you can imagine, I mean, they used to race everything out here. They used to race sidecar motorcycles, and imagine being the guy in the sidecar bombing down that hill 300 kph into that very tight left-hander. What could possibly go wrong? Well, a lot could, and that's where the chase came from, is some bad incidents there at Murray's. And even with the slowdown, Jake Murray still manages to cause drivers a lot of problems.
It is one of the most inauspicious corners, and therefore, by proxy, is one of the most auspicious corners on this circuit. It's one of those where every corner gets you, but when you put a nice, easy corner at the end of the lap and the start of the lap, it's one that will certainly bite back. Still on in the battle for Am, because you've got Eric Benson still looking to try and get back at Louis Gregg for position, and Gregg is doing a very good job right now out there. Ewan Bremer watches on in the background. Bremer, who's a dab hand actually with an MX-5, going a little bit higher up in terms of the power class here, battling it about here in these Radical SR10s.
It's actually a pretty comical comparison. As you said, these cars put down about 425 turbo horsepower, and they weigh 1,000 pounds less than an MX-5 Cup car. So just digest that for a minute, and needless to say, they're getting around here faster than a GT3 car. So these Radicals are no joke. And if you haven't tried one, I strongly recommend it. They're an absolute blast, and you can learn a lot about driving a car with this kind of performance and no electronic driving aids. Driving this Radical SR10 and mastering it will make you better at any car that you drive.
Yeah, it is one very, very unique car that is out there and racing. You are trying everything you can with that Ford engine, turbocharged with direct injection that goes into play, ECU engine management and data logging. And you look around, the suspension is always going to be something where you're trying to work out what you can do with it, with interchangeable roll bars front and rear, a 6-speed sequential transaxle gearbox with paddle-activated gear shift and auto blipper that is there. It's always going to be interesting to work out who's got what, and a little feign there in the back from Ewan Bremer tries to get that move, and look at the way they try and follow in the slipstream. Sebastian Lipp still stuck behind James Barry, but they are slowly clawing in that gap, 0.3 of a second through, and Sauli Raitanen is in the pits, which will indicate we are in the second pit stop cycle.
And Wrighton notably had a very short pit stop last time in the 12-second range. So he may be one of those drivers who took a lighter fuel load, and that is in the range of Barry and Lipp's first fuel stop. So they could be getting in the window now where a fuel stop is not just a matter of strategy, it's a matter of necessity. And we'll need to keep an eye on that, as Larson has shown that he's not going to try to push this. He's just going to save fuel. And is that going to benefit him in the end?
Early stop as well for Eric Benson, who was in that battle for the lead in AM category. So that certainly works out at the moment. AM category continuing to be a strong place to watch out there at this point. But at this stage, going over the top of the hill, Louis Gregg now only has Ewan Bremer to deal with for the moment. So how much of an advantage will be taken at that second stop, depending on the fuel numbers and how it all comes about. Sometimes when you take your direct rival away, it actually becomes more stressful than less stressful because your reference marker's gone.
Yeah, too right. And for me personally, and I know for a lot of other people, you go faster when you're driving near somebody else. People that have a difficult time putting down good qualifying laps, that can often be their problem. If you have a target, if you got a rabbit in front of you, it always makes you go faster. And Benson had enough of that, ducked out, and he may be trying to pull an undercut on Craig here, and we'll see where he comes out.
Well, enough of two Lips who are there. Sebastian in the pits, Christoph Lip also in the pits. So they will both make their final stops of the race and look to get out and away. And look at the times they go through. 10 seconds already stationary in the box. 13, keep counting, 14.7 there for Sebastian Lip, and is going to fly off and away and will be just ahead of Louis Gregg, the leader in AM. So that will give a little bit of clean air to work with, and that's a great indicator of what sort of time we're seeing in the stops needed for Kjetil Larsen, for James Barry, and for Horvath Gulliksen.
Yeah, Sebastian played that beautifully. Looking at the gap, he has a 6-second gap ahead. So if he was being held up in any way where he was prior to that pit stop, he's got to be happy with that result. It's an opportunity to put down some heaters and maybe get an undercut on some traffic head, and we'll keep an eye on how that plays out for him.
Well, how it goes for the leading duo, it's a case now for Kjetil Larsen to close right up to the back of James Barry, and I'd say the moment he gets there would be the perfect time for him to come down into the stop and make that final pit stop, because you look around and you think, well, do I gain an advantage from overtaking? If you're playing the fuel safe game, no, you don't.
Yeah, and if I was Barry, I would sure be thinking about coming in. I'm not sure I want to be giving Larson any more free toes here, and we'll see what he does. I thought he feigned toward the pit exit a little bit there, maybe trying to dupe Larson into following, and he is going to stay out. So it's Barry from Larson from Gulliksen. Pretty big gap from Larson back to Gulliksen of almost 2.8 seconds, and Barry and Larson going for another round. And remember, Larson's previous stop was a little bit longer, so he may be carrying a little more fuel in addition to whatever he's been saving running behind Barry and Lip.
Yeah, and Rudolf Nagel, who was one of the first to come in at the opening section, dives in. Andreas Friedrich also hits the pit. So Kim Andre Bjorklund will now move up to 8th position pre their pit stop. That now brings the scenario into play. Top two remaining, I would say, civil is the right way to describe the way they're racing at the front of this field. No one's throwing a haymaker at the moment. If you imagine it to be a boxing match, they're sparring.
They are sparring, although I think if I was Larson, I would be taking a couple of swings, at least show my nose, and make Barry think about defense, make him think about what I might do, and make him think about maybe covering the inside and driving a little bit offline. But so far, as you said, things very civilized up front, nose to tail, and Larson lifting out of every draft opportunity that he's getting on these two long straights.
Louis Gregg leaves the pits, and Eric Benson, who he was racing with, is only coming around Hell's Corner right now. And so look at the gap that's made. A good 5 seconds at least there, as he has to deal with Ole Gunnar Stensrud, who's there behind. Up to speed you go. I'll have to defend going into Quarry Corner turn number 2. But crucially enough, Louis Gregg has got himself the gap he wants.
Yeah, Greg is definitely working the pit sequences well here, as we see some more brilliant camera work there going up through the cutting. And here we go. Here's the moment that we've been waiting for. That is Barry will lead Larson over that brutal pit entry. And you said it, Jake. The pit entry is so tough because it's very twisty and high curbs, but the speed limit doesn't start until the very end of the pit. So it encourages you to go through there way too fast. It is awful.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, James Barry took a full second there diving into the pits ahead of Kjetil Larsen, who was much more safe trying to find that stop. And look at the difference, 3 seconds we've got to keep in mind here for Kjetil Larsen. That's the difference in terms of when they went in. And behind that as well, Gjerstrom Buckham's in, Gulliksen's in, and look at that off the exit. Absolutely perfection for James Barry, who has got the run and has got the jump ahead of Sebastian Lip. Horvath Gulliksen is going to come out with a different Lip to look at right now, with Christoph Lip, who was stuck behind Ewan Bremer all that lap, nowhere near.
And brilliant strategizing there by James Barry. I told you he was a professor out here, and maybe we can get another look at that pit entry. He absolutely attacked that pit entry, flogging that car. It was 4 wheels off the ground on the making his way through there, and you saw it pay off for him there.
Franek Sikorsky is missing the rear wing. The front is damaged to high heaven out there is the right way to say it, and it's happened at Skyline.
Oh my goodness, Sikorsky. And Jake, I'm frankly a little surprised that we haven't seen more of this. And the reason nothing's happening right now, folks, is he's on the virtual flatbed right now, coming down from the scene of that crash. But Sikorsky taking a big hit here. And this race has been really surprisingly clean. I'm a little surprised that we haven't seen more of those types of incidents. But one bit Sikorsky there, absolutely.
I think the threat of the incident has forced drivers to drive clean and well within their limits here today. It has been a very hard-fought race, but everybody has prioritised finishing the race first and foremost. Christoph Lipp, we focus on right now, who has been able to clear Ewan Bremer, still has to get by Pablo Serrano out there, who is a lap down, and then, only then, gets to his brother Sebastian and Horvath Gulliksen, who has seemingly leapfrogged up over that last run. Kjetil Larsen has work to do, 1.3 seconds, and has to get by the car of Stefan Mellis out there. This is Franek Sikorsky, and we get it in slow-mo because it's not right as he turns in for this first bit. It's here where he's overcooked it, now tries to correct it, and suddenly, if you have to correct anything over the top of the hill, out of time.
Oh my goodness, and thank goodness that is a sim. That is nose directly into the concrete, well over 100 miles an hour, kind of reminiscent of that big Mercedes-Benz GT3 crash at this past Bathurst 12, but a rough spot there. And like I said, this track dares you to roll the dice to get an extra 10th here and there, and if it doesn't come your way, that is so often the result. One of the things that makes Bathurst both exciting and challenging.
There are three drivers who are yet to come in, and well, two drivers now who are yet to come in because Kim-Andre Björklund has made the stop. It is now Lasse Sorensen and Christopher Tiverayan, and Tiverayan here is going to be staring down the barrel of everybody's going to be dropping here. He'll probably be looking at Gjestrembakken as his main target here coming out of the pit to go and make that work. But where Lasse Sorensen comes out, I think is an interesting question to be had, because Barry's got 1.3 or so over Kjetil Larsen, who's got 1.2 over Sebastian Lipp, who's got 1 second over Horvath Gulliksen. There is a world where all four come together in the final 10 minutes of this race, and we have an absolute showdown.
Yeah, that is definitely on the table. And as time ticks down, only about 16 minutes remaining, I keep going back to that brave, almost crazy, maniacal pit entry by James Barry. He knew when to roll the dice, when it was going to make the biggest difference for him. That may be the moment of the race. As you look at that gap behind to Larson, 1.2 seconds. He's safely outside of drafting range now. All he has to do is keep his pace up, keep it clean for the remaining 15 minutes, and he is going to have this one in the bag. Great work by Barry.
So with both Sorensen and Tiverayan both in the pit, it will now open up the leaders to go on by. There goes James Barry. There goes Kjetil Larsen. There goes Sebastian Lipp. There goes Horvath Gulliksen. Off the lane goes Lasse Sorensen, and is going to be with Christoph Lipp. But can the power be put down quick enough to chase down? Needs the slipstream from Pablo Serrano. It will be desperate for Lasse Sorensen's race. And only now Tiverayan goes, and is going to be behind Gjestrembakken by about 3 seconds or so. Lots of chasing to be done out there at this point, with the late stages of this race in full display. Gabriel Berger in the pits for the AM category, along with Robert Walker.
Yeah, really fascinating looking at those gaps on our timing tower. You look to the left of your screen, those are the gaps between cars, and looking all the way up and down the top 10, there's only one car within drafting distance. That is Sorensen forward to Lipp. So this field has spread out by virtue of the pit stops in a way that we normally don't see. These draft heavy tracks like Bathurst tend to suck the cars together and force them to train up, but Barry has broken away, and like I said, all he needs to do is keep his pace up, keep it clean, and keep Larson a second or longer behind, and he's in very good shape for this one.
This is what we call agonizing a gap between James Barry and Kjetil Larsen. It's just not close enough to pull right on in, but it's enough to make a threat out there in this race. Lasse Sorensen then closing down on Christoph Lipp. This would be for a top 5, and it goes to show you the quality and caliber of these drivers when you consider that you can throw a blanket over the top 5 at the moment, split top 6 even, split by about 5 seconds at the moment. Through the chase, Sorensen not close enough yet, but it's about timing when. It's not just if you can make a move, it's when you can make a move.
Yeah, too right. And really the key here for Sorensen, he's sitting about 0.3 right now. Lipp very, very fast. He's north of 7K in terms of his iRating. So Sorensen needs to hang on here and keep that gap where it is if Lipp gets away. And as I said before, just a tiny little bobble, a tiny wiggle, the loss of a 10th or 2 over the top of the mountain could be sufficient for Lipp to stretch that gap and get away from the striking distance in terms of the slipstream. So very tense moments right now as this one winds down, as people are watching those gaps and deciding what kind of opportunities they have down the stretch.
Yeah, and I'm just looking around here at the laps that have been done. We've done 23 laps worth of racing, and I would count the numbers here that Menno de Graaf will still need to come in and do one more stop in this race to get over the line. So Eric Benston should be in second. Louis Gregg has enough of a margin right now, 3.2 seconds over the line, 5 seconds to Benson. I think Louis Gregg's had a fantastic race here today.
Yeah, he definitely has. And you know, sometimes you drive within yourself, let the race come to you. And Greg sitting pretty right now, and look at that, about a second and a half behind to Graaf. And he's, you know, you just put yourself in a position to win. He's been hanging around the podium area for most of this, and it looks like the cards have come up in his favor through the pit sequences, and he's just got to keep it clean, keep care of those tires, and you know, keep it on the track for 11 minutes and 45 seconds.
I tell you what's telling right now, Sebastian Lipp can't keep pace here with the front drivers out there. There is Louis Gregg as we look at 5th and 6th. Lasse Sorensen continuing to close down to Christoph Lipp, the championship leader out there in Pro. He knows that he needed a good points haul today. 5th will feel like a little bit of a missed opportunity with Tiva Ryan in 9th place. This could have been a huge job. Ewan Bremer into the pits, so then make that 8th now for Tiva Ryan, as he'll be one of the last pitters down on in. Big kick of tail then coming off the curb at Hell's Corner, side by side then, and through goes Håvard Gulliksen, straight by Sebastian Lipp and up onto the podium.
And you kind of could see that coming. Lipp driving a little bit over his head, being up there in P3. Nothing against him. He's an excellent driver, but this field is very, very high quality field. And you saw Gulliksen just biding his time, and we'll see if he can stretch that gap up over the mountain to protect himself from a repass down Conrad Straight.
Well, really struggled there off the exit of the cutting, and so going all the way up Griffin's Mount, now going over towards the metal grate here. This left-hander, there's the metal grate, straight by you go, and over the top at McPhillamy Park. You start sensing that gap at 3.2 seconds, it's a lot to try and chase down late, especially when you consider how hard Kjetil Larson's having to push to catch James Barry out there at 1.1, if not 1 second at the moment. This is a tough battle that they find themselves with, and Sebastian Lipp might decide he wants to go straight back, or does he want to bring his brother back into play by battling so hard?
Yeah, definitely could be on the table. And another thing to keep in mind here, Jake, is that in the waning minutes of this race, the last 10 minutes or so, these tires are tired. They're certainly, you know, benefiting from a lighter fuel load, but going through the heat of all these slow speed understeery corners, the hard braking zones, the fronts are very, very tired. It gets more and more easy to wash out of these low speed corners like you're seeing here, riding along with Lipp, looking forward at Gulliksen. Murray's corner, very hard, easy to wash out there and understeer out of. Pretty easy to wash out here too. A little trail braking helps get it done, but this is really the high risk portion of the course as these tires start to fade.
well, I start thinking about who can do what. Teva Ryan, by the way, has gone by Mats Gestrombakken, who's now fallen backwards into the next position behind. So a 57.7 from Teva Ryan now puts him 7th past Gestrombakken, and now he's really trying to damage limit. And if Lasse Sorensen gets by Christoph Lipp, it's going to be minimal, the points difference, as they go from the first half of the season to the second. So talk about every place right now. It matters a lot where every piece of the puzzle falls, and it's been a tough first sector for Kjetil Larsen. 1.3 was the gap, now it's up to 1.6. What an opening sector by James Barry.
Yeah, Barry throwing down the gauntlet now. As I said, he's a very cerebral driver. He knows that the tires behind on Larsen's car are getting tired. He's been saving his, and he knows that if he wants to seal the deal here, he needs to protect that gap, throw down the gauntlet now, force Larsen to push it even harder, which actually could cause him to drop back in this late stage.
Well, if he starts dropping back and you start waving the white flag to speak of I give up on this, Kjetil Larsen is not going to be a driver who does that. You've got Lipp happy to sit behind Gulliksen. You've got the other Lipp happy to be ahead of Lasse Sorensen, who's waiting for the right time to make the move happen. Through goes Gestrombakken on the lap traffic of Serrano. But right now, 3rd and 5th remains as they are, and I think they are waiting for the end of this race, because that gap now at the front of 1.3 is now 1.8, and it's not because Barry's increased the pace, it's the fact that Kjetil Larsen just has to tap and say, I can't anymore.
Yeah, Larsen kind of giving it up here. He's probably now looking more at the gap behind than the gap ahead. That gap behind to Gulliksen, 3.2. So he's probably pretty safe there in P2. And I'm telling you, folks, when these front tires start getting tired, diving down through the dipper, diving into Forest Elbow, you can just feel disaster waiting for you. One small lockup on those worn out, overheated fronts can end your race. So Larsen may be finding discretion to be the better part of valor and be happy with P2.
And none of these drivers want to run up into troubles, because they will allow Teva Ryan to start moving up and scoring more points at 5 seconds, 6 seconds off the back of Sorensen and Christoph Lipp. That's going to give them a lot. Gulliksen up over McPhillamy and through Skyline. Pixel perfect through that section and down through the wonderful, wonderful dip now as they run through the lefts and rights of this downhill section of the Forest Road out there. Gulliksen is still keeping Lipp at just where he wants to be, 0.4 of a second, but I think there's patience in this one, and it is the patience factor of Sebastian Lipp that is going to be where Håvard Gulliksen starts looking around going, do I really want to be in this position where it all goes wrong? And Franek Sikorsky, speaking of positions where it all goes wrong, off the exit there, a half spin, and trying desperately to get that back going again, manages so. Very difficult without the rear spoiler.
Sikorsky struggling, and I would hate to be one of his body men, because that car has definitely seen better days. And here Sebastian Lipp has maintained that 0.3 second gap ahead to Gulliksen for the last couple laps. He is now telegraphing that he's not going to do anything until the last run down the Conrad Straight, and that is all that Gulliksen is thinking about right now. How am I going to defend that? And I got to say, Jake, with this amount of time left, one might feign a small error here if you're in Gulliksen's position and let Lipp through, so that is you behind going down the chase that last time and not instead of Lipp.
So you're telling me if you're in the position of Håvard Gulliksen, you'd have a tactical misshift?
Yeah, maybe wash out a little bit, maybe over slow, maybe wiggle the rear end a little bit, you know, just accidentally to leave Lipp no choice but to go ahead. And then you would be in a better strategic position when it came to the white flag lap. Just an idea.
It is an idea here with 2.5 laps to go at Mount Panorama at the halfway stage of the season. Sebastian Lipp trying to move onto the podium. Horvath Gulliksen, who is third in the championship, is going to be gaining on both his main rivals in front of him, Christoph Lipp and Christopher Tivarayan, who is there. Lasse Sorensen can help out even further if the move is done for 5th place. So there are a lot of different scenarios out there. And is this going to be an issue at the chase for Menno de Graaf? Yes, it is. Sliding across there the chicane and having to be very alert on that rejoin back onto track, because that has allowed the likes of many to go on through. I think that was Ole Gunnar Stensrud who went by.
Yeah, and here we are with Lipp. You can hear him lifting there. He had that move done easily if he wanted it. And again, he is going to wait here. So it is going to be fascinating to see how that plays out. Gulliksen has to know what's coming, has to make a decision how he's going to try to defend, or if he's going to try to defend. He may just already know that there's nothing he can do about it. He's not even going to try. And, he's pretty slow there. Jake out of Murray's, and he might have been trained to put JR strategy to work there, and Lipp not taking the bait.
They've changed positions for 5th. Lasse Sorensen then through on Christoph Lipp. Lead gap is back down again, and now down to 1.3 seconds over the line. So Kjetil Larsen hasn't given up hope for the race lead, but James Barry still has enough. You've got to take about half a second out if you want any shot of winning here at Kjetil, if you want to get by James Barry, who has been brilliant here today. Up through the cutting goes Gulliksen, a lot more aggressive into the corner. Doesn't get the drive, though, out of it, and you see the massive contrast in the lines between them as they go through turn 4 and now up the hill through 6 at Griffin's Mount.
Yeah, heading up out of the cutting, a very tough spot. You got to be able to put the power down early, and if you attack that too aggressively and take a wide exit there, you've got to pause just for a second to put the hammer down. I think you saw that happen to Gulliksen there, and you saw Lipp close that gap down. Lipp still all over him. 2 minutes left. I got to be thinking that the white flag will come out the next time around, I believe. I guess it could come out this time. We'll keep an eye on that for you, but we're definitely coming down to crunch time.
Yeah, this white flag should come out then for these drivers. And look at the lead gap, because that's now just ticked under a second for the first time. Kjetil Larsen late, putting pressure. Third it's on, because will Sebastian Lipp make a move this time? No, he'll wait for the final lap of this race. I think Christoph Lipp allowed the move to happen from Lasse Sorensen. Didn't want to be in the wrong place, so can the two Lipps find moves onto the final lap of this race? The gap agonizingly close, 1.1 over the line for James Barry's lead over Kjetil Larsen as he tries to stave off a challenge. You've got to get within 6/10, you feel, if you are Kjetil Larsen, to have any sort of throw at it. Murray's is a place where you can make moves. Will Horvath Gulliksen be able to hold off Sebastian Lipp on the final lap? Up the hill they will go to turn 2, the quarry corner. Behind that, you got Christoph Lipp trying to deal with Lasse Sorensen with championship implications in play for 5th and 6th positions. Up through the cutting they go, 9/10, 8/10 of a second, and through the corner. How aggressive on the exit is Kjetil Larsen? He's brilliant off of the exit of the corner. He wants to give James Barry as much pressure as he can. Heading on to the final lap, has been unable to go and slow in these final stages. Gulliksen knows he's in the same boat, but a much more difficult, leaky coracle that he will have to go down the hill to try and work through when they get to Conrod. Down now, hitting Skyline for the final time. Kjetil Larsen needs to kiss every apex as if it is everything he has ever wanted in the world. James Barry still has his margin at 8/10 of a second. Kjetil Larsen, it's going to have to be full bore down the backstretch of Conrad for the final time for the wait for the fastest corner in Australian sim racing. Lasse Sorensen's in the wall in 5th position. Through will go Tivarayan to pick up an extra place, and so too will Christoph Lipp find himself what he needs. It's close but not close enough at the moment for the lead as James Barry has got himself safe. Has he gone through the corner all right? Yes, still 4/10 of a second. A mega send at Murray's still might be there. Behind, Sebastian Lipp has got 3rd place, but James Barry, hold on, takes the win at Mount Panorama.
Oh, what a drive by James Berry, and my goodness, what a call by you, Jake. I had to check my pulse. I think I hit about 150 there listening to you call these cars over the mountain. And man, oh man, James Berry showing his racecraft, absolutely brilliant. He did it all with that insane Batman pit entry, 4 wheels off the ground, heading into the pits. That allowed him to set that 1 second gap, and he was able to maintain that with ice water in his veins. Larson took about 2/10 out of him each of the last 2 or 3 laps. It was not enough. You see the final gap there, just under 0.3. Larson had a crack at it, but Berry able to put his head down and get the job done. And here comes Greg over the line for the AM victory.
And a wonderful drive by Louis Gregg of the No Limit Sim Racing Academy. He has simply not put a foot wrong there, and he has driven a wonderful race ahead of Eric Benson and will take those points ahead. Simply wonderful. This is what happened on the final lap of the race. Lasse Sorensen, pressure tells.
Oh my goodness. And you know what he was thinking when that car started wiggling? Here comes that Falcon wall, and he was nose into it. It could have cost him a lot more than it did. I think he got away from that one lucky. But as I said, the end stages of these races, those front tires get less and less cooperative, and I'm surprised we didn't see more people bitten by that.
James Barry, what an hour he has just had with 20 seconds added on top. He wins by 2/10 over Kjetil Larsen, who needed 1 more lap to go and make that move. Sebastian Lipp will finish off in 3rd, ahead of Håvard Gulliksen, making the pass on the final lap. Christoph Lipp will take 5th, but crucially has his rival right behind him after dramas on the opening lap of the race. Christopher Ryan could have had a huge chance today to score big points, but 6th it will have to be only. Lasse Sorensen on the final lap of the race, finding the forest elbow wall, and just like that, down to 7th, ahead of Mats Gjeström in 8th. Rudolf Nagel will finish off in 9th with similar troubles on the opening lap, and Andreas Friedrich will round out the top 10 in the field. Kim-Andre Björklund would be 11th for SimRacing Norway / Chapter X, with the Radical Privateers car of Sauli Raitanen finishing off in 12th, ahead of Ewan Bremer in 13th. Your leading AM today is Louis Gregg in 14th position, with Eric Benson in 15th place. Jorge Gonzaga will get 16th, ahead of Gabriel Berger in 17th, who will eat now into the gap at the top set by Crowley in the championship, not here today. Oscar Soltero is 18th, ahead of Robert Walker. These drivers all a minute down on your overall victor, with Ollie Gunnar Stensrud rounding out the top 20 for Team Slow-Mo. Guy Robertson and Menno de Graaf would be the last cars on the leading lap, with Franek Sikorsky and Pablo Serrano, the first of the drivers, 1 lap down. Stefan Mellis was also a lap down today, and just the one retiree being the Nix Esports driver of Andernieten Lendorf, who would be just 19 laps down when all things were said and considered. We are going to take this chance, though, to talk to some of our drivers, and I think first and foremost we have to go to our race winner overall here today, that being James Barry. I don't have the permissions to bring him in, but I'd love to bring him in right around now. But what a wonderful bit of racing from you, James Barry, who joins us right now in the commentary box. Talk about those final few laps there, those 5 or 6 laps you had to put to the end, because Kjetil Larsen was right there and you just were able to keep him at an arm's reach away.
Yeah, you know what? 5 laps to go, 4 laps to go, 3 laps to go, it was all good. And on the last lap, my teammate George Gonzaga comes in my ear and says, "Is this the last lap?" And being the nice guy I am, I come on the radio, I say, "Yes, the last lap." And he said, "Last lap?" And I say, "Yeah, last lap." And then go around the corner and he says, are you on the last lap? And I say, "Yes, last lap. Now leave me alone, please." And at the same time, I see that Kjetil was as close as he's ever been. And knowing this track, like, any time you lose concentration, you can make a little mistake. I think I actually did make a little mistake on the uphill turn 6. I don't know what it's called. But yeah, fortunately, you know, I made my way down safely enough and I had the gap. And yeah, I was just saying to Kjetil just now, thanks for pushing me so much, because Jesus Christ, it's not easy at this track for that long.
No, it really isn't. And from starting 5th position on the grid, it seemed like the top 10 all had fantastic pace here today and could have threatened for the race win overall. So talk us through your strategy game here, because from the first pit stops, it allowed you to get that platform where both you and Sebastian to take the lead after the opening stops, and then you're able to hold it through that second sequence.
Yeah, starting in P5, I knew that if I could just stay in the train, then we'd be in contention for the win, potentially. I wasn't really thinking about the win. But as the laps went on and then we had those first pit stops, I could tell it was Shetil and myself who'd probably done the best job on fuel, and Sebastian to an extent. And then Sebastian faded away with the second stop, and it was just Shetil who'd done as good a job as I had on fuel. And then I just, did the pace when I needed to. But for the most part, yeah, it's about fuel saving, definitely doing quite a lot of lifting and just doing my calculations in my head to make sure I get the optimal amount of fuel in the stops.
So you walked into today 5th in the championship, down by about 50 out there on Christoph Lipp. You now take the chance to jump over Andreas Friedrich and some of the other drivers in this championship you start to close in on. Is this now the perfect platform for you, this win at Mount Panorama, to go and attack the second half of this season?
I don't know. I was kind of surprised how much pace I had this week at this track. And going forwards, I still expect some of these guys like Christoph Lipp and Tverayan and Gulliksen to discover some really good pace, and it's going to be really tough. So I'm not going to hold myself to any expectations of pushing for the championship. I'm just happy to get this win, because at this track, I feel like I finally kind of got to grips with this track, and I'm just super happy with this result.
Well, no doubts about that. Happiness is one which you can hold on to for a very long time. James Barry joining us there and picking up the victory overall. JR Gregory has taken a wander down the paddock, and he has run into the driver who finished second overall today, and that is Kjetil Larsen.
Kjetil Larsen, what a drive today. And man, oh man, when it came down to the stretch, I was watching that, watching the times, watching your gap. It looked like the last 3 laps, you had taken about 2/10 out of Barry on each of those, and you came so close. So what is going through your mind when you're weighing your risk reward and managing that gap ahead with a possible crack at P1?
It was an amazing race, guys. James gave me a run for the money, and I tried all I could after the last pit stop. I pushed. I saw I had the fuel enough to the end. I did a little mistake after the last pit stop in the cutting. So he got 1.5, 1.6 ahead of me, and I needed to push really, really hard, and I did. And on the last lap, I risked everything down from the top of the mountain. I'm so tired now. So.
Oh, I imagine so. That was absolutely epic, and I'm not sure that anybody could really fully understand what it is like to drive the way you did and be competitive at the front of a field that's as competitive as this one, and have James Barry in your sights, who is a perennial champion in these cars. So it was fantastic to watch. I know you're going to go back and watch the replay, and I hope you enjoy that. When you hear my partner Jake's call on that last lap coming over the mountain, you better sit down, because it is absolutely thrilling. So gosh, thanks so much for stopping by to talk to us. And as we wind up, is there anyone you'd like to thank or give a shout out to today?
Of course, you guys make an awesome show for us, and our sponsors, my team, my teammates, Eagle Coatings and Sande Trafikkskole, and my family who lets me do this. So without them, I wouldn't be here.
Well, again, thank you so much for joining us, and thanks for an epic drive. That was truly an instant classic, and we look forward to seeing what you and all these radical pilots can do next week.
Thank you.
All right, that was.
Yeah, that was Kjetil Larsen there, joining us in second position overall. I've taken a wander down. Sorry to cut you off there, JR. But I've found Louis Gregg, who is here as AM category victor here today. Louis, 4th position walking into today's race, and a big day for you, now being able to jump up. No Luke Crowley here today. How important was it to take advantage knowing that he's using a drop week?
It was 100% important. We knew that he wasn't here from the start, and qualifying didn't go to plan at all. So it was just focus on the race, and we ended up getting the strategy just perfect. to pip Eric at the last pit stop. So it came out to work out well.
And so finding that opportunity then to make the strategy work, 2 stops here around Mount Panorama. How much were you finding the ability to save fuel around here? You got 2 very long dueling straights to go and make that time work. But ultimately, it's a case of how did that work for you in terms of finding the ability to keep the numbers in the realms of possibility for you?
I'm not sure whether you caught it on stream, but me and Eric were playing mind games with each other for sure. We both kept on lifting. We were trying our best to not take the lead and be the one that was leading us. But yeah, we managed to sit behind for a good 5 or 6 laps before I ended up back in the lead. So that 5 or 6 laps that I was lifting off everywhere, it definitely worked.
And so looking at the second half of the season, of course, there's no understanding of what the tracks are at this point in time. So for you, it's a case of not the easiest thing to prepare for. But in terms of how you tackled this season so far, would you say that you're about where you want to be, wish you were a little bit better, or saying you're doing better than expected?
I mean, it's my first season here, so I'm happy with how it's going, to be honest. But I know there's more pace, 100%. I want to be at the front. I'm battling at the front, fingers crossed.
Well, we wish you the best of luck with that, but at least in the meantime, it's an AM category victory for Louis Gregg in the 3-2-2 machine, picking it all up and getting it done here today. JR, that will bring proceedings to a close here in the Radical Sim Racing Europe Championship for 2025, your 5th round here at Mount Panorama Bathurst, powered by Radical Motorsport and RaceData.ai. What an incredible race, and look at how important that was to set up the second half of this season.
Yeah, it really was an absolute instant classic. I'm not surprised at all that this race turned out this way. Mount Panorama is one of those tracks that gives people extra motivation to excel at. If you can say that you're putting down consistent hot laps at Mount Pano, it's kind of similar to being really good at the Nordschleife or one of those other highly risky, difficult tracks. It motivates people to go better. It motivates the people around you to go better. And it really was a phenomenal race today. And I think the second part of the season is going to start off a little bird told me that it may involve a couple of F1 circuits in a row, and these cars excel on those tracks. So I'm greatly looking forward to the second half of the season, which starts here on RaceSpot in a few weeks.
Absolutely. Only place you can catch it here is with us on RaceSpotTV. If you haven't had the chance to already, wherever you may be watching, do all the good social media things of liking, of sharing, of subscribing, of telling your friends how great Radical Sim Racing has been, especially this European Championship out there overall. From the team here that's brought it together, from you've got, of course, JR Gregory and Ramiro Agustin Cisneros, who has been in on the cameras. We got Americas going into play next Sunday. You definitely want to jump in and join that. My name has been Jake Sperry. But it's a championship which you look at in AM category with no Luke Crowley turning up. Louis Gregg stepped up to the plate and said, I'm going to have the best run compared to Eric Benson, and I am going to start digging into the points gap, knowing how important it is by the time the end of the season rolls around. But what a day it was in Pro, where all the best had themselves a little tougher time of things. It was about who could stand head and shoulders up and say, this is my race and I want to be the yardstick heading into the second half of the season. James Barry gets his win, and we will see how that goes when the second half of the season rolls into town.